Hi there, folks. John Brodrick. I'm here at the Metals Investor Forum, November 2017, and I'm talking to Scott Close, and he's the Director of Investor Relations for EMX Royalty. Who is EMX Royalty, do you ask? Well, you may remember a company called Eurasian Minerals. Great little company, and they've rebranded themselves to refocus on what's really cool about the company. So, Scott, maybe you could speak to that. Explain to the viewers what EMX is up to nowadays.
Well, originally we started out as a prospect generator, right?
Yeah.
And we've really always been a royalty company. So as a prospect generator, when we joint ventured or sold off a property, we always held a royalty back on those properties.
Mm-hmm.
So during the past 14 years, we've organically built a royalty portfolio organically through our prospect generation. Now, the conventional royalty business model is to write big checks for royalties. So that's an expeditious way to build a royalty portfolio, but it's also massively capital intensive, and that oftentimes entails debt. I mean, even the biggest royalty companies like Franco-Nevada take on debt to buy royalties. That's not our preferred method of building a royalty portfolio. Largely we have the organic royalty portfolio that we do supplement on occasion with royalty acquisitions when we can find those at favorable pricing levels.
Mm-hmm.
And usually our preferred currency to affect those transactions is shares, so that we don't have to take on any debt, although sometimes there is a cash component to those.
Okay. So the refocus of like your company is really an outgrowth of the prospect generator model. Now you've
That's
actually
right.
generated those prospects.
That's right.
And so as those projects move forward, in fact, we were speaking yesterday, you have there's a project coming up. The name escapes me right now, but that's actually going to really generate some great cash flow for your company. The one in
Turkey?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be Balya. That's a lead,
Right.
zinc, silver district that we basically control half of. And we picked that up in government auction in Turkey in 2006 for about $17,000. And so we sold that property to a private Turkish mining concern called Dedeman Mining.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a 4% net smelter royalty that is uncapped and unbuyable on that property. And they have recently moved that into production. And right now it's producing on a relatively modest scale, but that should be ramped up here in the near term. And that will ultimately turn into a real ATM for us.
Excellent. And you also have a property in Nevada as well, too, right?
Yeah, that would be the Leeville royalty on the Carlin Trend. And the Leeville royalty encompasses portions of the Leeville mine, the Turf mine, and part of the Carlin East mine, all of which are Newmont gold mines.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a 1% gross smelter royalty on those properties. And so that's paying us out anywhere from $1.5 million to $2.5 million a year, depending on where commodity prices are and other factors. But Newmont has made a lot of exploration on the property, and the future looks very bright there.
Yeah, they have this big expansion program going on there, right?
They do.
Yeah.
They do. And they've come up with some very interesting drill intercepts wholly on our royalty footprint there. And Newmont also spent $330 million US to put in the Turf 3 vent shaft, which is nothing but a shaft that pulls air out of the ground. There's not a man cage on it. There's not an ore skip on it. All it does is pull air out of the mine. So you can imagine if Newmont spent $330 million to pull air just out of the mining complex, they've identified an awful lot of additional mineralization underground to be able to amortize out that capital cost.
Good. One more area that I want to speak about is Sweden, because it is one of the best mining districts in the world, and you guys actually have some stuff there as well.
Yeah, we have a lot of things there, actually. And if you read the Fraser Institute's survey of mining every year, obviously you know that Sweden is always right near the top of the list, within the top 3 every year. So it's a very favorable jurisdiction in terms of being very mining friendly. You can get a drill permit there within 2 weeks. There's cell phone coverage across about every square meter of the country. There, you can drive up to the projects on either forest roads or in some cases even paved roads. You're always near a town, so it's a fabulous jurisdiction, and it's also very prospective for the development of minerals. We have a lot of properties there for base metals, for copper, cobalt, platinum group metals,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of gold properties that we've recently acquired. During the past protracted downturn that we had for 5 years, a lot of properties were dropped, and we just waited and bid our time and waited for people to drop those properties. Now we've picked those up, and we have those available for partnership or for sale to the mining companies of the world out there who are looking for such prospects.
Right. That's how a company like EMX Royalty can really do well during a downturn,
That's
because
right.
there are great properties that people just have to let go because they run out of
Right.
money. So you can pick those up, and then, especially in a place like Sweden, they have old mines. But if you use new technology and like stuff like that, there's still plenty to find in those old mines.
That's right.
They were just mining the visible stuff.
That's
in,
right.
in
That's
like
right.
many cases.
That's
and
right.
so there's some really prospective areas there that you could really do some stuff with.
That's right. And the way we were able to take advantage of that during the downturn is, conventional exploration companies have a difficult time raising money in a downturn. But because we weren't a typical exploration company, number one, we were a prospect generator, plus we had royalty cash coming in from production royalties, advance royalties, so we're receiving royalty monies on properties that aren't even in production yet. We get a 10% management fee on any of the properties that we manage for our partners. Plus, we get milestone payments from properties. So if they come to a pre-feasibility study, or they initiate production, or they produce the first 500,000 ounces of gold or something like that, those are examples of milestones where they would have to make us a payment. Plus, there's annual payments that come in on the properties, which accelerate every year, typically for about 5 years. And so we always have cash flow coming in.
All right. Well, let me ask you one more question, which is, what can people expect to see out of your company, say, over the course of the next year? What is going to be the news coming out of EMX Royalty?
Well, I think the biggest thing is right now we're not quite cash flow positive.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, on a per annum basis, we're shy of being cash flow positive by about $1.5 million to $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
We expect to be cash flow positive in 2018. And I think that once we become cash flow positive, we'll see a material change in the share price.
Excellent, excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
Yeah, we're involved with a very interesting project in far eastern Russia. Some people get a little nervous when you start talking about Russia, but we have actually found it to be a very amenable jurisdiction to work in.
Mm-hmm.
And the Russians are actually very pro-development, and we find them good partners for business, frankly. And that is a project called Malmish. And that's in the extreme southeast corner of the country, very close to the Pacific Ocean, just north of the Chinese border by about 150 miles or so along the Amur River. And this is a footprint that where they've identified 14 copper gold porphyry centers.
Wow.
Within a property that's about 10 miles long and about, 6 miles wide or so. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the largest ongoing copper gold discoveries in the world. That property is owned 49% by Freeport-McMoRan and then 51% by IG Copper, which is a privately held U.S. company run by a U.S. geologist named Tom Bowens. And there's no underlying Russian ownership there, but we do have a great relationship and the ear of the Kremlin on this. We are actually the largest shareholder in IG Copper, who owns that 51% or controlling interest. So we own about 35% of IG shares. So we don't have an equity stake in the property. We're only a shareholder in the controlling interest, which is the way we like it. Because if we owned an equity stake, then we would be responsible for providing our proportional amount of exploration costs, such as drilling.
Right.
So this way, we've got all the upside without the liability.
Okay. Well, that sounds interesting as heck. I need to check that out some more. This has been a great interview. EMX Royalty. Definitely check the company out. Thanks very much for speaking to the viewers. You folks stay tuned. This is Sean Brodrick from the Metals Investor Forum, November 2017. We'll have more good stuff for you.